right in. And it seems that it's been a real sector-wide effort to understand the implications of these changes, the methodology, and someone that's been really integral in this is Claire. So I'm going to come to you first, and many of our audience members will be familiar with your research. But for those who aren't, or as a little refresher, can you just tell us a bit about the research you've done? So you found a number of kind of issues, a number of red flags, particularly with the allocation of caps. So can you tell us how substantial are these? Are there any in particular that you're keen to outline?
Sure. Thanks, Kim. And thanks for the opportunity. I spent a bit of time answering questions in the hearing, particularly on the caps allocated to vet providers, and I'll talk to those. But I do think while a lot of universities had their say about how the caps would impact them, the analysis that I do is how does this impact provider by provider, because that's how I sort of make sense of the sector. And I just want to give a couple of examples to show that there's some real problems, I think, in how vet caps were allocated, but even the university ones, to me, don't quite make sense. So the Australian National University, back in 2019, it took a decision to limit the number of international students it would enrol because it was concerned about the student experience for both domestic and international students. In 2023, they had 40% international students. Their cap for 2025 will be down 14%. Monash University, another one of our research intensive universities, and please, this is no reflection on any of these universities if I contrast them to each other. In 2023, 30% of its cohort were international students, commencing all according to the categories, but let's just go with shorthand. 33% contrasted to the ANU's 40%. While the ANU goes down minus 14% in 2025, Monash goes up 20%. And Federation University, one of our regional universities where the government's policy intent is more international students in the regions, fewer in the capital cities. And yep, FedU does have some capital city campuses. In 2023, 35% international student share, down 50% in 2025. So it's really hard to make sense of, even amongst the universities. And I understand the methodology and I know it's there, but the results of the methodology, I think, there's a lot of anomalies in it. There are worse anomalies in how the vet caps have been allocated. I'll give a couple of examples. There are 12 vet providers who have had their registration cancelled by the regulator. They are appealing in our administrative now review tribunal to try and get back their licence to operate. Many of them have been prohibited as part of the appeals process from enrolling new students, but they've all been given caps. They've been given 1,430 new places. One of those providers who the regulator thinks is so bad they should not be teaching any students, they have the 6th highest total for 2025 of any vet provider. And I just briefly contrasted vet provider in Australia. It had 308,000 students in 2023. Overwhelmingly domestic, just a small number, about 1% internationals. It has fewer international students in 2025 than this provider that's been cancelled, and the provider that's been cancelled had only 3,000 students and only 12 of those were domestic students. So I can't make sense of why we would be wanting to retain places for these providers. If they win their appeal, that's fine. 2026, let's get them some students, and we're all good. Even more shocking, on the 20th of September, the Australian government's tuition protection service was trying to help current students enrolled with one of these providers to get fee refunds while they were being allocated new students for next year. Right? I mean, to my mind, that's just not. I think caveats around integrity and appeals and cancellations, and until you win your appeals, or ought be a part of the methodology that's missing. Just one more, or two more, very briefly. Officials from the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations said they were going to allocate a cap of 30 new students for every newly registered provider, so who'd been newly registered in the last couple of years. So I went through and had a look at who are these providers. And while there certainly are some that have just been newly registered 2022, 2023, just started operating, and it's a good thing to give them some students to start off with in 2025, there are 79 vocational education providers with a cap of 30 who had no students in 23 and 22, but they haven't had international students since at least 2019. Some of them were first registered in the 1990s, right? These are not new providers. These are providers that just haven't been enrolling international vet students for the last 6 or 7 years. They've been focused on domestic or on higher education international students. So again, there's about 2,000 odd places being reserved for what might appear coming out of the methodology as new providers, because they've had new students in the last couple of years. But when you dig into it, it's clear that they've just made different business decisions. Very last one. In Australia, a lot of people watching are Australians, they know this, but for an international audience, our regulators set a limit on the overall number of students, international students, a provider can enrol. We call that a CRICOS cap. It's separate from these proposed caps on new enrolments. There are 10, again, it's not that many, but it doesn't make sense. There are 10 providers who are going to be given more new students next year than they're actually allowed to enrol. And 4 of those are delivering incredibly short courses. Our regulator has said short courses are a real risk, an integrity risk, a quality risk. They are, and I didn't go on their websites to find out how long their courses were. I went onto the Australian government website to find that detail out. So the certificate courses that they are teaching should run for a minimum of 6 to 12 months. They are running them from between 4 and 8 weeks. And they have caps where there are hundreds of private vocational education and higher education providers who will get 10 students or fewer next year and close their doors because of a lack of financial viability. So sorry to bombard you all with that, but there's quite a few issues that I've found when I was looking at